Please welcome co-founder, chairman, and CEO of Sharecare, Jeff Arnold, and National Geographic fellow and founder of Blue Zones, Dan Buettner.
I'm waking up, I feel it in my bones, enough to make my system blow. Welcome to the new age,
Okay, we're going to have some fun. I'm going to talk about the world's longest lived people and the lessons they teach us as individuals and, more importantly, as populations. But because we're in Las Vegas and David Copperfield's big, I thought we would start with you. I am going to estimate each and every one of your life expectancy. And in order to do that, I have here 8 questions, the 8 questions that most highly correlate with longevity, and I'm going to pose them to you. And your job is to raise your hand when the question applies to you. And number 2, the hard part, count how many times you raise your hand. So you ready? First question, and I can see all the way to the back, by the way. First question, raise your hand if you move at least 30 minutes every single day. That could be on a treadmill, it could be walking around your neighborhood, it could be working out. All right, raise your hand if you sleep at least 7.5 hours most nights. 7.5 hours most, all right, say half the hands. Raise your hand if you eat at least 3 honest servings of vegetables and French fries and ketchup do not count. Okay, about half of you. Raise your hand if you have not, and I underscore not, had unprotected sex with a stranger. I said not. I'm going to hang out with you guys tonight. Easy question. Raise your hand if you have at least 3 good friends who, number 1, you can have a meaningful conversation with them. Number 2, you can call them on a bad day and they'll actually care. And number 3, you actually like them. There we go. Almost all hands. Raise your hand if you drink between 1 and 2 drinks per day. Between 1 and 2 drinks per day. Vegas doesn't count. Okay. Raise your hand if you've not smoked in the last 5 years. Easy question. Not smoked in the last 5 years. Almost everybody. Way to go. Final question. Raise your hand if you believe you have the capacity, physical capacity, and the desire to reach at least age 90. Okay, that's actually the biggest predictor of how long you're going to live. But with these 8 questions, I can get a pretty good idea. Now, this is assuming you're 50 years old, and I know you guys are a lot younger than that, but let's just go with it. If you've raised your hand at least twice, and you're a man, life expectancy is 73, and if you're a woman, it's 77. If you raise your hand 5 times, and you're a man, life expectancy is 80. If you're a woman, 84. And if you raised your hand 7 times, and you're a man, life expectancy is 89. If you're a woman, it is 93. Did anybody raise their hand all 8 times? Anybody raise their hand all 8 times? Ma'am, could you stand up, please? Could we give her a huge round of applause? You're now dismissed to the cocktail lounge. So I'm going to take 7 minutes here and talk about the world's longest lived people. So for the last 15 or so years, I've been working with National Geographic to really get to the bottom of what really delivers life expectancy. So instead of starting in a test tube or a petri dish, we worked with a team of demographers. We sourced through census data for the entire Earth, and we found the 5 verified parts of the world where people are living measurably longest, these so-called blue zones. And in these places, people not only reach age 100 at extraordinary high rates, but they have a fraction of the rate of the chronic disease we're suffering in the United States. And in a sense, we struck out to reverse engineer what they did, to find the common denominators that no matter where you go, whether it's Asia, Europe, Latin America, or the United States, and you find long-lived population, you see the same 9 characteristics. Number 1, they really don't exercise in the way we think of exercise. Instead, they're nudged into movement every 20 minutes or so. Every time they go to work, a friend's house, out to eat, it occasions a walk. They have gardens. Their houses are deconvenienced. They're doing most of typical everyday labor by hand. They suffer the same stresses that we do, but what they have that we don't are sacred daily rituals to reverse the stress of the hurry and worry of our lives and the ensuing chronic inflammation through prayer, through taking naps, through ancestor veneration. They have vocabulary for purpose. You probably say, big deal, purpose. People who can clearly articulate their sense of purpose live about 7 to 8 years longer than people who are rudderless. We did a meta-analysis with Harvard to find exactly what people in blue zones have been eating for the past 100 years. Good news, they drink a little bit, 1 to 2 glasses a day. When it comes to their food, though, this comes from 155 dietary surveys done over the past 100 years in all 5 blue zones. It's mostly a plant-based diet. It's a very high-carb diet, flies right in the face of paleo. The pillars of every longevity diet in the world are grains, greens, nuts, and beans. About a cup of beans a day will impart about 4 extra years of life expectancy. They do eat some meat, but fewer than 5 times a month, and pieces no larger than this clicker. Less fish than you might expect. No cow's dairy, and when it comes to drinking, it's all water, 6 glasses a day, tea, coffee, and a little bit of wine, usually with a meal. And by the way, if you're drinking a red wine with a Mediterranean diet, you about quadruple the flavonoid uptake. So there's an argument that wine could actually be better for you at dinner than a glass of water. Not only what they eat, but what they don't eat. Their houses are set up so they naturally consume fewer calories. They eat off of smaller plates. They eat with families. There's no electronics in the kitchen. And then the foundation of every blue zone in the world is how they connect. They make family a priority. They keep their aging parents nearby. They never put them in a retirement home where life expectancy drops almost immediately. They tend to belong to a faith. And they curate social networks. The 4 or 5 people that you hang out with impact your life expectancy and your health as much as catching a cold. If your 3 best friends are obese, there's a 150% better chance that you'll be overweight yourself. So this is the what. This is what people do to live longer. They live about a decade longer on average than we do. The morbidity period at the end of their life is compressed from 3.5 years to about 6 months. But more important than what they do is how they do it. Because at the end of the day, you could do any one of these 9 things, and if you do it for 9 months or a year, it's not going to make any difference. You have to do it for long enough that you avoid a chronic disease. So interestingly, in all these places, you see the same cluster of lifestyle factors showing up together, and they mutually support each other. And that's probably the secret. No diet in the history of the world has ever worked for more than about 3% of the people who get on it for more than about a year and a half or 2 years. People in blue zones, they eat the right food, mostly plant-based, and they move naturally because they're purpose-driven. They hang out with the right people that encourage the healthy behaviors, and they live in an environment where the healthy choice is the unavoidable choice. So the big aha here is that when it comes to measurable longevity, it's not something that is very successfully pursued. You never see any of these spry centenarians who at age 50 said, well, oh, darn it, I'm going to get on that longevity diet, or bought a treadmill for their basement. In all of these blue zones areas, longevity ensues. It's a product of the right environment. So in 2009, working with the University of Minnesota School of Public Health and funded by AARP, we went about to create a blue zone, blueprint for an American blue zone. We auditioned 5 Minnesota cities and set up the same sort of strategy that we were observing in international blue zone. First of all, we pretty much accepted the fact that human beings are genetically hardwired to crave sugar, fat, salt, and take rest whenever we can. That's why we're overweight in America. We live in an environment of ease and abundance, and we evolved in an environment of scarcity and difficulty. So rather than try to point the intervention at the individual, we established what we call a life radius, and then we went about at changing that environment. So we put together a team armed with a policy bundle of best practices that would favor fruits and vegetables over junk food. And through a consensus process, we help cities adopt the right policies. So this is nationwide. By the way, that's the #1 best return on your healthcare dollar at the population level, is changing policies. We had a second team, mostly people good at the technical aspects of designing cities for human beings and not just cars. So by helping the city engineer design the next round of streets to make sure there's a bike lane, a sidewalk, public transportation's easy, you can raise the physical activity level of the entire population by 30%. Way more effective than buying everybody a gym membership. A third team comes in and orchestrates teams of 5 people to help them make friends with 5 other people organized around walking or eating plant-based. A fourth team that administers a Blue Zone certification program for all the schools, restaurants, grocery stores, and workplaces. And finally, a fifth team that comes in and helps people identify their sense of purpose and gets them volunteering. Volunteers have lower rates of obesity, lower rates of disease, and measurably lower healthcare costs. So not a silver bullet here. It's silver buckshot. We unleash a healthy swarm of nudges and defaults where all day long it's sort of the Adam Smith silent hand of people being nudged into slightly better behaviors for months, years, and indeed decades. Can it work? Albert Lea, Minnesota, our first Blue Zone area in 2009, over about 2 years by adopting this plan, they lost collectively about 2 tons. Healthcare costs went down for the city by about 40%. That made national news. 55 more cities came to us. We auditioned them, ended up choosing the beach cities of Los Angeles, California. Very different culture there, but the same take of redesigning the environment so the healthy choice was the easy choice. And over the course of 5 years, this is measured by Gallup, we saw a 17% drop of BMI. People lost weight, stress reduction, people's stress went down, exercise went up, and the reported life satisfaction went up significantly. And by the way, this was done by a third party, Gallup, against California controls. So in other words, other cities around that weren't working. So 2 years ago, we teamed up with Sharecare, and this thing has really taken off. We're now in 26 cities nationwide. Most of the time, we're working with the hospital systems or the Blue Cross Blue Shield plan. Most significantly, HMSA of Hawaii, who've embraced Blue Zones for the entire state of Hawaii. And Jeff in a minute here is going to tell you about how that worked. But at the end of the day, when it comes to making people live longer, better, either individuals or population, trying to change behavior is occasionally a short-term success, but it is almost always a failure for almost all of the people in the long term. So if you want to help people live longer, change their environment, not their individual behavior. And with that message of technology, I'm going to bring Jeff Arnold up, the CEO of Sharecare, my partner, the Wonder Kid. Now you're in for the best part of the show.
Okay, good afternoon. It's great to be here today. And so I thought I would take my 7 minutes and give you kind of a rapid fire of the evolution of technology and my personal experience that's helped shape some of the work that Dan and I are working on together. So back in 1994, start a heart monitoring business to monitor patients' hearts remotely. The coolest thing I thought at the time I'd ever seen. What I learned at a young age, though, was it didn't matter how great the technology was. You had to build a relationship with the patient, and if you built a relationship with the patient, you got compliance, and if you got compliance, you got results. 1998 rolls around, and we start WebMD. This was pre-Google. And what we learned is what was most important was developing trust. The information had to be right 100% of the time. People had to tell other people about WebMD if we were going to grow. Got into the education space next and had a company called How Stuff Works, and by now Google had exploded. And technically we wanted to understand how to architect content in a search-driven world, so if somebody went to Google and typed in artificial heart or hybrid cars, we would show up first. What we found there is quality rises to the top, and we were rewarded for those best practices of always writing the best content possible. Got into the hospitality industry and really wanted to understand how you could scale guest experience. So we had the Forbes travel guide, and what we learned is that you could have 800 standards that you could take to 42 countries around the world, and places like Aria here could have 10,000 employees that every day would step and repeat to achieve the best in guest experience. And Paul Berry, who's the GM here, is in the less than 1% club as one of the 5-star winners over the last several years. Our hope is we can take those same standards to Blue Zones communities. Our hope is that we can take those standards to hospitals and start to work with hospitals to show them how they can treat patients the same way hotels treat guests. Sharecare rolls around the 2012 timeframe, and at WebMD our tagline was "Now Health Has a Homepage." In 2012 we thought that what was needed was all your health in one place. Consumerism was taking off, smartphones were becoming pervasive, but we thought to have all your health in one place, what was going to need to happen is that we were going to need to organize wellness, illness, and lifestyle. So we went out and we made 11 acquisitions, and we spent $500 million building a platform that could meet anybody wherever they were on their health journey. Spending lots of time and energy on perfecting the technology and really starting to understand the business of healthcare. So how could we use one app on your phone? So the same way I don't have 12 apps on my phone to manage my money, why would I have 12 apps on my phone to manage my health? So we thought about how could technology help improve RX compliance? How could we close gaps in care? How could we de-escalate risk? All the areas that we talk about all the time, but being able to have it all in one place. But more importantly, what I've learned from Dan in the 2 years that I've worked with him is it's not only solving the business of healthcare issues, but it's also how does the technology make somebody feel? How do you go from episodic to everyday? How do you get somebody to think about this all the time, not just when they're sick? And how do you think local, even though you have global aspirations? So one of the things, assets that we own at Sharecare that Dan mentioned is the Gallup Sharecare Wellbeing Index. So we poll 500 people every day all across America to understand what America's heartbeat looks like. And then we work with our partners in trying to improve this data. So in Georgia, where I'm from and where we're headquartered, the data suggests that we're number 31 out of 50 states. And earlier this year, we went to our governor and we said, we can do better than that. We can use technology and we can work within our environments, and we can have a goal of going from number 31 to number 10 in the next 3 years. So the governor enrolled his 640,000 state of Georgia employees into the platform, every teacher, firefighter, police officer. And this was a press conference that we did about a month ago at the Capitol with the Commissioner of Health announcing what our first quarter results were. But we thought that with what we were trying to achieve with Sharecare, it wasn't right that the only way that you could have this is if your employer or your health plan bought it for you. So we wanted to bring it to citizens at large as well for free, and then knowing if we could get consumers to engage with the platform, their employers or health plans would want to join later. So this is how Sharecare feels in Atlanta, different than Hawaii, different than Brazil, but I thought I'd give you a quick flavor of that.
The Hawks and Sharecare
are teaming up
to make Atlanta
the healthiest place to live,
by helping you take better care of yourself.
with Sharecare on our chest.
It's a reminder of our commitment.
to share care with you.
and this season
We will give you the tools
To check your stats and standings.
The same way you check ours.
all on your smartphone.
because you
Because you are the heart of this team. Join the movement at hawks.com/sharecare.
And with that movement, what we were proud to announce at that press conference is 300,000 Green Days were earned by those 200,000 teachers in the first quarter. And what a Green Day is sort of like a wellness currency. And every time a Green Day gets earned, which is tracking your sleep and steps and other things to improve your real age, the governor gives $2 to his employees for earning those Green Days. So it's a wellness currency that we're very hopeful can drive the type of engagement that we've always looked for in these types of solutions. So when I met Dan a couple years ago, he was off, running Blue Zones all around the world, and I was fascinated with the results he was getting. And he was already doing some work in Hawaii. And as he mentioned, he had a partnership with HMSA, which is the Blue Cross Blue Shield of Hawaii, who has really embraced innovation and really embraced community. And Blue Cross Blue Shield of Hawaii bought Sharecare for all 1.2 million citizens of Hawaii across 8 islands, and we're already deploying very successfully the Blue Zones. So we have this goal in Hawaii, which is number 3 in our Gallup Sharecare Wellbeing Index, to be the number 1 state. And we very much kind of focused on the data. And we put together a little video to show you some of the work that we've done in the last year to kind of give you a visual of what Sharecare and Blue Zones look like in a community. Everybody's looking out for each other in an effort to make everybody the best they can be.
At the end of the day, our whole world is going towards technology, and Sharecare is, when it comes to medical technology and the way they engage with people, nobody does it better.
Hawaii may be the closest place to heaven on earth, and it's also a fast emerging blue zone.
Wherever you are in your healthcare journey, you can be better tomorrow.
Hello, Maui! Kahalui, hello!
There comes this point in everybody's life where you have to feel that you are worthy of living well, you are worthy of good health.
So not just having one platform to solve the business issues of healthcare, but having one platform that makes people feel a certain way that they engage every day.
So over the past 4 years in Hawaii, we've seen over 28,000 people take this individual pledge and change their own immediate social network, 301 work sites, and about 26 grocery stores. This idea of actually changing the environment, Hawaii actually embraced it, and over the last 3 years, they've seen their ranking nationwide when it comes to social connectivity and purpose go from number 46 in the country to number 3. And that's because I believe it's the combination when you take high touch and high technology and bring them together, you get one of these 1 + 1 = 3 situations.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff and Dan.